We're going to end this series of videos by looking at two examples of ideas and evidence for and against them. This will give you an opportunity to see how you can apply what you've learned. The first is going to be the idea that vaccines cause autism. Obviously, that one's not true. And then we're going to look at probiotics, which for a long time were controversial, but there's more and more evidence in support of the positive effects of probiotics on human health. Let's begin. A part of the population is avoiding the MMR vaccine, and the MMR vaccine is against measles, mumps, and rubella. And these are serious childhood diseases that can have detrimental consequences, even resulting in death in sometimes. Why? Why are people avoiding it? The fear is that vaccination can lead to autism or autism spectrum disorder, which I will refer to as ASD. In ASD, a child will fail to respond to his or her name or appear not to hear you at times. They will resist cuddling and holding and preferring to be alone. They will have poor eye contact and lack facial expression. And this can lead to antisocial behavior and as adults struggling to fit into society. Autism is typically diagnosed between 0 and 3 years of life, and this is also the time when babies get their first vaccination. So it's not unusual to parents notice a correlation between vaccination and the beginning of this disease. In comes Dr. Andrew Wakefield, who published an article in The Lancet. Parents came to Dr. Wakefield, and he also solicited parents who had autistic children and were vaccinated about the same time. And he surveyed these parents and found that all of them felt that the autistic symptoms began after vaccination. So there was a synchronism between this autism and the vaccination. But remember, one of the key tenets I've taught you is that correlation does not equal causation. If you see a correlation, it's worthwhile to investigate, but that does not mean that one event caused the other. Dr. Wakefield asked a worthwhile question. Is there a connection between ASD and intestinal dysbiosis and the MMR vaccine? What he concluded was a bombshell on public health. He claimed to have found a connection. All patients with ASD in his report had this new intestinal disturbance. And he also suggested that the MMR vaccine may be involved in precipitating this intestinal disturbance and then causing ASD. A claim like this, understandably, got a lot of press attention, and it was picked up by the anti-vaccine advocates, and they used this as persuasive evidence to convince the public not to vaccinate their children. Unfortunately, Britain saw vaccine rates drop from 92% to 80%. For the first time in decades, there were measles outbreaks. If you dug into the paper, you started to see a number of problems. The first question you should ask is, what was the sample size? And it was 12, and that's small. However, the large effect they were seeing, where all the children with autism had this intestinal disorder and all the children that did the control group did not, made it seem like it was still a significant finding. Secondly, there is only a correlation between the bowel disease and ASD and the MMR vaccine. Third, they trusted parental recall and the parents' memory of when they were vaccinated and when they actually then started showing symptoms of ASD. When other researchers went back and looked at the medical history of those children, there were already indications with some of them that they had ASD symptoms before they were vaccinated, and then with others they were vaccinated and it was a year later when the ASD symptoms showed up. Now, a more significant charge was a charge of fraud in the GI analysis, when doctors in the hospital that were not involved in the paper looked at the gastrointestinal tract of these children who had ASD. Their inspections found no abnormalities. Dr. Wakefield and his colleagues went back and looked at them and then reclassified them afterward. Finally, and this is probably the most serious charge, follow the money. Wakefield was paid by lawyers who were preparing a case against the MMR vaccine, and that's where the money came from this study, and it would be very convenient to have a study in the Lancet to support this court case. Gold standard is if you do experiments, then other people go farther and investigate this, and they support your evidence. Other analysis done in the wake of this paper showed no correlation between vaccination and ASD, and these were very large population studies, and this has been greatly discounted. Looking at that, you find out that the MMR vaccine absolutely does not cause autism. We now move on to an example of a controversial topic that ended up being supported, is pretty much accepted by most people now. And that's that bacteria that live on us have a positive effect on human health. And if you develop a concoction that has living bacteria in it that contains these beneficial bacteria and you consume this, this will actually have a beneficial human health benefit. Previously, this is a controversial idea that people kind of felt was in the zone of wearing crystals and wearing pyramids and chanting or something like that. It wasn't until a landmark study in 2007 by Core et al. That people started to change their minds. And in this study, they showed that L. salivarius could protect against L. monocytogenes. This is because of a bacitracin produced by L. salivarius. Let's dig into the paper a little bit. The paper turned out to be credible. First of all, it was in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. This is a very prestigious journal because it's produced by the National Academy of Sciences, which is the national organization of scientists in the United States. If it's in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science, you can bet that they carefully looked at it. Second, what's the sample size? In experiments they used between 10 to 40 mice. You might think that's small, but the effects that they saw between the mice were between 10 and 100-fold. And they did statistics on this, they had normal distributions, and the statistics showed that there were large differences and it was statistically significant. They then showed that bacitracin is the cause, or that's what they claimed. And how did they show that? Well, first of all, they took L. salivarius and they mutated, they changed the gene that synthesizes bacitracin and made it so it no longer worked and the organism didn't make it. When they then used that organism as the probiotic, the probiotic effect goes away. They then purified bacitracin from L. salivarius and exposed this to L. monocytogenes and showed that L. monocytogenes was actually inhibited by the bacitracin. So this was very solid evidence that yes, L. salivarius has a probiotic effect, and this effect is inhibiting Listeria monocytogenes, which is a known pathogen. Also, follow the money. This was funded by the government of Ireland. They got no financial benefit from the findings. So there was no conflict of interest for the authors or the government of Ireland in this study. Finally, further research has supported this. If you go and you search PubMed just for probiotics review and hit it, you will get over 5,000 articles that show or talk about the positive effects of probiotics. Finally, in this series of videos, some closing thoughts. First, be curious. Be curious about the world around you. Make sure that you're thinking about things and wondering about things. Secondly, read widely. Don't just read one point of view. Look at lots of different points of view. Third, be skeptical of new ideas, but be open to change. And then finally, be an independent thinker. Don't just do what your friends or your group around you do. Verify the facts yourself. All right, that's it.